Okay, hi folks. This is a little additional tutorial about how to apply the array modifier. And this is a situation that crops up especially when you have complex shapes. It sometimes happens when you have complex shapes rather than just a simple cube as your original array unit. And so I'm going to show you how to apply the array modifier, and then we can break it up into individual components. So okay, so we've already got, I'm going to right click on the object. I've already created this array, and using the empty coordinate systems as we've discussed previously, select the empty array and transform it in the X direction. That splits the object apart a little bit more. And then let's go to the Y, split the object in the Y direction, and let's go to the Z coordinate system and split it up in the Z direction. Okay, just to separate it a little bit further, make for some other different interaction when we apply some physics. Okay, and I hit the right button to select the entire object. Now, this object is a generated array, and what we have to do is apply the array generation before we try and split it up into individual components. So let's go ahead and look at the modifier, and we see that there are 3 modifiers right now active, and we're going to apply the modifier. We'll start with the first one, apply, the second one, apply, and the third one, apply. Now, you have to understand that once these modifiers are applied, then that basically fixes the object. So in other words, I mean, you can undo from here, but once you start performing additional manipulations to this object, it will operate as individual units rather than just one array object. For example, I can no longer, now that I've applied the modifiers, I can no longer move the empty array and change the object shape. You see that? I can move it, but it doesn't affect it anymore. That's because I've applied the array modifier. All right? I hope that's understandable. I'll hit undo just to undo that change to the empty coordinate system. Okay, so now we can select, it's still a grouped object though. It's still a single group, so we have to break it up into individual separated components. So let's go ahead and switch to edit mode. And you see they're all individual blocks. And I'm going to hit the P button and save by loose parts. And we wait for a minute. It takes a minute to separate 1,300 cubes. If you're working on a lower powered machine, I mean, you don't have to use 1,300. You can use a 5 by 5 by 5 array. That's fine. Okay, and that's it. So now I have cubes separated into individual objects. I've got cube 1 through, 1,300 something. So let's go back to object mode. And as we can see, I can select any cube. And so just for the sake of a little bit more practice, I'm going to set up a little bit of physics here. And I'm going to also load a script and show you how that works. So let's start out by adding a sphere. We'll add a UV sphere. And it adds it at this default location. But we're going to move it to be underneath the cube object. So I'm moving around here until I get it oriented where I want it. And I want this cube to be, or I mean the sphere to be right directly underneath the array of cubes that I've previously generated. Okay, that looks good. And here's a detail. We have to move the light outside. So let's go down to the light. Here's the lamp. Let's move the lamp out so that it's near the camera. It's a good place to start. And finally, what we have to do is we don't want, when we're selecting our cube object, we don't want to be selecting the lamp or the empty coordinate system. So let's turn off their selection capability. Lamp, not selectable. Empty, Z, empty Y, empty X. Okay, so now I can't select those anymore. And let's select the cube, the sphere, and let's change its dimensions. Let's make its dimensions 8 by 8 by 8. Okay, so it's a little bit larger sphere, and we want to set some properties for that sphere. Okay, it's underneath it reasonably well. And let's set some properties. Let's assign a material to it. And we have to set a new material. And how about making the sphere yellow? And these are its properties right now. It doesn't have any physics properties because I haven't assigned them yet. So let's go ahead and in Blender Render, let's go ahead and add a collision modifier. Now that we've added the collision modifier, I can go to the control panel, I can see its basic properties. Okay? And I can go to the material, and I won't see anything until I go to Blender Game. And now I see its friction, force, distance, damping, elasticity properties. Let's set the elasticity to be a little bit higher. Okay. Okay, and now, while still in the game, Blender Game, we're going to set some further properties. Let's go to collision, and we have to make it rigid body in this case, and we'll leave its mass and radius values to be intact, and but what we're going to do is lock the translation so that this cube is, or this sphere is not going to move. And let's hit the P button, and we see that absolutely nothing happens. And that's expected because I haven't set any properties for this cube object. So now we're going to go ahead and do that. Now in order to set, I've already broken it up into separate cubes, so I need to be able to apply the properties to the entire system, or entire set of cubes. And there's no way to do that in Blender directly. So what we have to do is use a script. And I'm going to show you how to load a script and apply it to this cube set of cube objects. Alright, so here we go. We're going to change to text editor view instead of timeline. And we're going to load a script, which means we have to go to text, open, and I have to go to the directory where the script is located. It's not this one. It's actually in my computer. It's in Documents. And here's the script, the same one that I put on the Vista website for you. And I'm going to double click it, and now here's the script. And just for the sake of completeness, I'm going to select these three different options. I'm going to select show line numbers. I like to see the line numbers. Wrap the words if there's not enough space. Okay, there is enough space in this case, but we'll select it anyway. And then syntax highlight for scripting means it's going to color the script so that you can see the it just helps to visualize what's going on in terms of the script. Like comments are green, and you know, for loops are in magenta, you know, etc., etc. And what we want to do is we want to apply these physics properties that I've already selected for this object to the block here. Not to this object, but to this block. So I'm going to click here and hit the A button to deselect all objects. I'm going to select one of the cubes to be my sort of fundamental object. Okay, so I've selected one of these cubes, and that's that ends up being my sort of primary selection. And now we're going to select the rest of the cubes. I'll hit the B button. Select these cubes. Okay, now they're all selected. And now I can apply the script to all of these objects. And all we have to do is simply run script, and we're done. I don't see any errors. And if I go ahead and hit the A button, deselect all the cubes, and let's select one of them, and we see that the properties that I've defined here in the script are now applied to all of these different objects. So technically, if I hit the P button at this point, I should get some behavior. Ah, it looks good. And notice that I haven't locked the rotation of the sphere, so the sphere is rotating. Let's go ahead and lock the rotation of the sphere. And let's also set its collision bounds. Should have done that already. Give it a margin. Let's give it a larger margin. And hit the P button. And now you see there's different behavior. Ah, there they go. All right. So this is kind of interesting. You can see there's a lot of detail in trying to set up these kinds of systems, these physical systems, and you know every option has to be set in accordance with its understood physical properties. So now you've seen how to break up an array, how to apply the array to the object. So let's play around just a second and see if we can do something even more exciting. Let's select the block and let's apply some dynamics properties, some material properties that are even more exciting. So how about, let's give it an elasticity of 0.95. And now I'm going to run the script. And now all of these blocks, if I hit the A button, and I hit the right key, and I look at this, we'll see that the elasticity properties, these are located in the material, is hot. Okay. And let's hit the P button and see what happens. It might not make too much of a difference, but we'll give it a shot anyway. Oh, okay, now they're very bouncy. And so it is a difference. Okay, great.